Okay, Exile Chapter 27. At first, all Sophie felt was thick, scratchy black, poking and prodding, and pressing against her mental barriers. She tried to fight back, but the shadows were relentless, and the coldest ones found a way to seep through. Images flowed as sharp and clear normal memories, but they were wrong. Every color felt off. Every sound felt distorted. It felt like reality had been stripped and smashed and resembled into something else, something terrifying. Trees rained from gray-green clouds, their dark branches reaching for the clawed hands as they fell. Beasts sprang from a ground lit with stars, bared their fangs and chased her across the sky-covered hills. Glowing eyes peeked through bushes, covered in blue ears, and butterflies with bright red lips whispered sounds like mush. Sophie searched for some clue, some key to translate what she was seeing, but there seemed to be no rhyme or reason for anything, just the twisted thoughts of a twisted mind. The images tangled, calling around her, pulling her deeper. She whipped through more darkness and fell into the streets of a ruined city. The clouded and cracked crystal buildings were a hodgepodge of structures Sophie had seen throughout the Lost Cities. The whirling castles from Ursina sandwiched among the silver-tipped spires, from Atlantids mixed with gleaming mansions that wrapped around the pyramid of foxfire. There was a fountain in the center, all two golden figures standing in a round pole, holding hands as colored streams of water showed them from every direction. A shadow of a girl appeared between them and took off the buildings, shattering everything she touched before she dove into a sea of shards. Sophie plunged after her. Down, down, down she sank, feeling Prentence's mind turn cooler, thicker as she landed in a blank space, void of any sound or color. A bubble of nothing. She pressed against the sides, but force slammed her back. Then a face appeared in front of her, pale and featureless, except for two teal jewels for eyes. The more she stared into them, the more her head spun until she couldn't tell which way was up or down, or where she'd come from, or how to get back. No reason to worry, the face whispered, as laughter erupted around her. The sound was young and childish at first, then deep and dark as the face shattered to a million tiny flakes that surrounded her, stinging like needles. Some part of her mind knew she wasn't actually being touched, but that didn't make the pain any less real. She wanted to scream or cry or call for help, but she had no mouth and no voice. She was just a blip of consciousness, a bodiless mind. The needles of light turned electric, zapping with tiny shocks over and over until the only reality she knew was their pricks and pain. She was trapped, stuck in this nightmare world where shadows tricked and light attacked. And she was nothing, no one. No, she was someone, but who was she? It was a question she used to know, but the answer felt like it had been erased by the panic and pain. shoved out of her, beyond the burning lights. She had to find it, even if it was hard, even if it hurt. She pushed through the shards of light, letting them scrape and singe, and she pulled through and stripped more of her consciousness away. And then she was falling again, down, 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 with no end in sight, dropping so far she knew she'd never pull herself up. But without the tormenting stings, she found the answer to her question. I am Sophie Foster. She transmitted the words to make them more real, and a thin strand of white light cut through the black. She wrapped her mouth around it, clinging to the lifeline and hovering in the dark with no idea where to go or what to do. The cord of light flickered. Then a whisper of warmth trickled around her, building to a hum as the shadows bent and twisted into a shape. A dark bird, a black swan. It spread its wings and dove. Sophie watched it fall, wondering if she could trust it. Let the past be your guide. She released her hold on the strand of light, falling, falling, falling so fast, so hard. She caught up with the swan. She grabbed its wings and held on tight as it swooped and swept and swerved, finally crashing into a world of sunlight and blue sky and green grassy hills. But the world was too bright, too shimmering, almost blinding. The swan, now a real bird, tumbled with Sophie across soft ground until they collided with the legs of a woman, knocking her down. Her musical laugh rang through the air as she fell into her tangled heap. Then she pulled herself free, cradling the flapping swan in her arms and whispering for it to be calm. She looked about 20, with blonde hair that hung in soft waves and violet gown. Sophie had never seen her before, but something felt familiar about her, especially when she smiled. The smile made her turquoise blue eyes sparkled the exact way Adeline's did, in the rare moments when she broke free from her grief. Julie. Can you see me? Sophie transmitted, knowing it was crazy. Julie didn't respond. Instead, she looked back to the swan, wadding at her feet, and reached to stroke its black feathers. I don't understand, Sophie transmitted, wishing she could scream when silence was the only response. What does this mean? Julie laughed. I'll be okay. Her voice was so familiar to Adeline, similar to Adeline's. Sophie felt chills. Julie turned toward her then, and the clarity in her stare felt different than the other visions, like it wasn't a dream or memory this time. We have to trust, Sophie told her, smile fading. Trust what? Trust who? Julie didn't say. She just glanced at the sky and said, You have to go. How? And what are you doing here? What does this mean? Julie swept up the swan with long, graceful arm and tossed it to the bright white clouds. Follow the pretty bird across the sky. The swan spread her wide black wings and flapped as the scene splintered to dust. But the shadows that rushed and pushed Sophie up instead of down, shards of memory tried to grab her as she rose, but she was moving too fast, blurring through the darkness until it turned gray and then white, and then she was back in her body, gasping and heaving and thrashing inside 2 strong arms that held her like a vice grip. "Don't you ever do that again," Alden shouted. That's the end of chapter 27. See you.